Hey everyone, welcome to today's edition of One Single Story. It's Wednesday, and I almost said we're in the book of Genesis, but we're not. We're in the book of Obadiah, and we're referring to Genesis some this week, and a couple of other passages as well. But today, Genesis 26, 1 through 43, and it says, "A severe famine now struck the land as had happened before in Abraham's time, so Isaac moved to Gerar, where Abimelech, king of the Philistines, lived. The Lord appeared to Isaac and said, 'Do not go down to Egypt, but do as I tell you. Live here as a foreigner in the land, and I will be with you and bless you. I hereby confirm that I will give you these lands to you and your descendants, just as I solemnly promised to Abraham your father.'" But we go on to find conflict that arises in this chapter. And he has to know it's coming. He has to know conflict's coming, but it's happening. And no matter what anybody thinks, I don't like conflict. Like I don't enjoy it. Not real conflict.
Mhm.
Now, if we want to debate something, that's one thing. That's fun. But just like real interpersonal conflict, that's no. If you enjoy it, you have issues.
You got a problem.
That's right.
Yeah.
What advice do you give people who are currently experiencing conflict?
I feel like the older I get, the more I realize that there is almost always going to be some part of your life you're experiencing some sort of conflict in. Especially if you're in a moving, changing environment. And I think that my advice is probably to learn not to let it overtake the rest of your life. You can only do what you can do about a situation, and then you can move on from it and not let it just consume you. Like
So
I feel like it
how
does
do you
for
do
some
that?
people.
How do you do
Me,
that? Mm.
I would say that I may be unusual in that way for a woman because I can pretty easily shut things off and not spend a lot of time thinking about it. I don't think it's so much denial as it is I can kind of
Turn it off.
yeah, kind of turn it off. And I don't know. I have seen people and I experience people who tend to let that kind of stuff just consume them, and it seems to be all they can think about when it's happening. All they can think about is how to resolve the conflict, which of course we should all always be doing. But sometimes conflict takes time to settle out. To let the emotions about whatever it is, calm down before anybody is going to be level headed enough about it. And being decisive is one thing. Making a wise decision or being able to wisely solve a conflict can take time.
Yeah, it can be complicated. I think you make a really good point. Oftentimes, the conflicts we're in didn't happen at once. And I typically say to folks in some counseling or coaching setting, typically, at least my perception is, the longer it took you to get to this point, the longer the process
Get out of it.
to get out of it, to figure it out. And there's this quote, and I think it comes out of the pre-marriage counseling book that we have used so many times. It says, "Conflict is inevitable, but combat is optional."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it's important to understand conflict's going to happen. And I'm just confessing here that, and I'm not saying it's always easy now, but back up just a few years perhaps, and to me, conflict was more of a personal attack. There were too many emotions and feelings, although I typically didn't like blow up and say a lot of things, but I would internalize it, and it would just kind of just sit there. And the part of the problem for me with that is the unresolved conflict then puts the lens where you start to see that person or anything related to that issue in a different light, and you start misreading or misunderstanding scenarios and situations because it hasn't been worked through. And you asked the question, what kind of advice or how you deal with it? And I made a few notes here. Well, one option in conflict is just to ignore it and leave it alone. I don't think that's usually good advice, but I do think it is important if some things just aren't that important, that you can just say, you know what? It is what it is. It's not going to change anything in life. It isn't worth the fight. It isn't even worth the battle, the effort, the energy. And if you can move on and be healthy and whole with that perspective, sometimes I think that might be the approach, depending on what the issue is. I think sometimes compromise may be the answer to conflict, where you look at an issue, you like for it to be all over here, they'd like for it to be all over here, and you come to this concession where you meet in the middle. And I think sometimes that's an appropriate address for it. I put in here in my notes too, sometimes, and I've seen this quite a bit, is people simply need an outside source or third party, like a mediator,
Neutral
counselor,
party.
coach. Yes, a neutral party that can come in, because oftentimes, when you sit and listen to that story, you listen to that story, all of a sudden you start to see things, I think, more clearly and say, the way I see it's this, I see this as this. Let's find a solution to this. And I have told married couples this on more than one occasions, where I said, you guys don't possess the ability to resolve this on your own. You got to have some help here. And oftentimes, I'm quick to say this, oftentimes that's beyond my pay grade too. I can help you maybe in a crisis, but some things you just need professional help with, and to bring somebody else in.
Yeah, well, for the most part, in those situations, I can keep you from killing each other.
Yeah.
Keep you from leaving. Beyond that, I'm going to put you in somebody else's
Absolutely.
hands. Yeah. Are you able to set conflict aside, like Sheryl said? Are you able to lay it down?
Much, much better and quicker than I used to. As you said, the older I get. And I think part of it has to do with being exposed to the potential for conflict more, if that makes sense.
No, I agree. I think it makes a big difference. If you deal with it more frequently, you have to learn how to deal with it better.
To process it better and quicker in a more healthy way. That's my perception. Now, again, I'll be transparent. There are some people that conflict is more challenging to deal with than others. And a lot of that has to do with prior history, has to do with attitudes and demeanors. Even, I would say, even more than the issue. It's
when they come rolling with fire.
Yes.
You want to roll with fire.
You want to throw a little back. I was like, let me show you my flamethrower. But yes,
that just happened for me last week.
Oh, really?
Yes.
You want to share a little more?
No, I don't.
Did you scorch them?
No, but the person the other adult that was in the room was like, you just handled that a lot better than I would have. And I was like, thank you, because take some self-control.
Yeah, it really does.
But I think, no, seriously, I do think that, you're talking about having perspective and having practice at it. I think it makes a huge difference when you really can put something like that into perspective, when it's not, you don't let it roll around your head over and over and over. And I think that's true about a lot of things in life, for me anyway, that if I can put it in a context and say, like, this is just part of my life right now, this is not permanent. This is something that I'm going to work through, or me and whoever else this is going to work through, in which I said sometimes that's going to take some time. I think that it keeps anything from just blowing up and becoming something much bigger than it really should be in your life.
Yeah, I think I know, because I've experienced, there are times when you feel like you've done what you can to try to facilitate a resolution to, quote, conflict, and the other person is not in a position or not ready to respond or work through that with you. And then at that point, I think you do what you know is the right thing to do with the right spirit, motive, and attitude. And then at that point, sometimes you have to set healthy boundaries and just decide, okay, time and space is now what's needed, rather than pursuing the issue.
Yeah, so there are conflicts that I think I manage pretty well. There are other conflicts that I don't manage pretty well, and then there are ones that I'm really going to struggle with. if I don't have very high expectations, so like with my grandchildren, for example, I have very tempered expectations, and it didn't. I don't even view those times as conflict. Those are I'm the adult, they're the child. It's my responsibility to respond right. But with adults that should know better, those are hard conflicts for me. Especially like if it's, if you keep saying something over and over again, and then the hardest for me to work through. So, and I would say, Cheryl, I have the ability to set it aside. All right, this is I can't deal with this right now. Let's push it to the side. The times that I can't are times when there is something that needs to be addressed. Okay, and I know it needs to be addressed, and I'm looking for the right opportunity to address it, because timing is everything. If you have control over the timing, you should try to control it. Don't talk about it when you're in a bad mood, and
or tired, sleepy,
hungry, lonely.
You guys probably don't want to have conflict with me right now.
Which one are you? All of the above?
Hungry and sleepy.
But then other little things that normally probably wouldn't bother me, that are associated with the situation or the person, just come one right after the other, like then it's all I can do. I mean that. It is all I can do, not just to blow my top, and it boils in me. I'm just like I'm saying. I mean, when I say boils, I mean it is the thing at the forefront of my mind. If I don't have something going on, like it's right there, and I hate that. And that doesn't happen often, because you got to have a specific set of circumstances for that to happen. But I can think of more than one instance where, okay, I've said I need to address this. I've even maybe told the person, okay, we need to talk about something, but the timing just hadn't been right. And then like 4 or 5 things happen just all together. And I have to work really hard to not let that overtake me, not just the conversation, but just overtake me and my thought process and how I feel, and that's unusual. It's odd that we talk about this today, because the last 72 hours have been that kind of situation, and even just sitting here this moment, like I have a knot in my chest.
It's going to be a fun meeting.
About that. About that.
Yeah. Like it's just, well, I can't say it's just that, but if when those things are not right, it feels like everything else. And then there's the normal, because I'm juggling way more than I ought to every day to begin with, and we all understand that. So like that's not I'm not in the boat by myself. But when you're already juggling too much, and then you get this one thing that just feels like it's just pressure, and that's kind of how the last 72 hours have felt. And I hate it. Like I am. Well, we're talking about how you deal with this, so I'm gonna talk about this. I hated to see my wife leave this morning, because we spend every day together. We're together more than the average Joe, and I find lots of comfort in her steadiness and just her presence. And it was, and She didn't leave me, by the way. I probably should clarify that.
Yeah,
I
you
think
might
you're just saying
yeah.
because you were already experiencing that kind
That's
of
right.
turmoil and conflict,
That's
that
right.
seems like it's
It
going to
didn't
make
have
it
anything to do with her. That's
worse
right. I
now
probably
that
should
she's
clarify
gone.
that.
Yeah.
No.
She's going on to she's working for the church this
Yeah.
week. You know, it just it feels like it adds to the pressure, and I hate it. And I say that because sometimes I think that people listening think, "Oh, y'all are so spiritual. You know, you can do this and you can do this, and y'all are giving us great advice." But we have moments. I have moments where the conflict or the pressure of the situation, if I'm not careful, can overtake my days.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, anything y'all want to add to this about experiencing conflict?
It's not fun.
It's not. Like I said, if you like it,
Mm.
you got issues. I do enjoy a good debate, but I don't enjoy conflict, and I consider them to be different.
Right.
Well, thank you for joining us today. I hope you will be back tomorrow as we continue our conversation from the book of Obadiah.